access to, which devices I'm using when. Is it conceivable that in a world of recording everything, we're stuck with hoping morals end up accepting it? Should companies be giving us the tools to kind of reclaim some autonomy?
So I think that there's a lot that platforms can do as a service to their customers. I speak from some experience. I run a website called WashingtonWatch.com, which had about 1.6 million visitors last year, and about 7 of them are the rudest mofos you've ever seen or read. And I've been tinkering very consciously with the way the comment system works to try to disincentivize rude behavior, teach people how to avoid trolls, how not to induce them to misbehave, with a variety of techniques, including allowing people to ban entire commenters for themselves, to mask certain words, all kinds of different things like that. And I get a lot of appreciation from my visitors for doing that, because they want to talk to each other and not get this kind of interference. And I think a platform that does this, including asking, reminding people to check with others about posting pictures, will get a lot of credit in the long run. It's some work to try to do this, and I haven't figured out exactly how to design a comment system so that it matches the real world. Comment boards are like a room this size where everybody gets to speak to everybody else all at the same time, and it's just non-intuitive. And so I'm trying to design comments so that it works well and people can gather in small groups all on the same comment board. You can do that with pictures. You can do that with other social behaviors that people are moving online, including reminding them about courtesy.
Well, Jules, could I?
Yes, please.
Because one of the reasons why I'm here is because so many of my colleagues are in Berkeley, California, at our workshop on protecting privacy and what's an appropriate privacy framework for the law and policy going forward. And what I came armed with is David Vladeck, the Bureau Director's remarks this morning. And I was going to say, well, I can tell you what he said. And then I realized with the time change, I can give you a preview of what he's going to say.
You heard it here, folks.
And so your question was basically, should companies be offering tools and information to give consumers more choices? And our response is yes. That's one of the things that David is saying in a few minutes in Berkeley, and that's the sort of thing that we're monitoring. It's the sort of thing that in Berkeley we're interested in learning more about, is how companies are using both technology and their ability to reach consumers to give end users more tools for making choices about how their information is used.
If I can jump in on that, because I do work at the Cato Institute, I'll note that I've been working on improving my users' experience without regard to what any federal agency might think about it.
Well, I'll comment from the family perspective that when you're working with teens, one of the best things you can do to help them be resilient is to learn how to use the privacy settings that are offered. And the more granular the settings, the more opportunities for students and youth to have an active role in managing their online experience. And the children who feel the most harassed and the most victimized are those who don't recognize you can actually limit the comments on your site until you have reviewed them first. And a few little strategies like that change the experience from night to day. You no longer are a victim of what is being posted on your site. You are the manager of your own site, and that is very empowering. And I'm always surprised because youth are startled to find out that the terms of service agreement is their friend, that they actually have some protection, because unlike free speech, no one has to have someone involved in their social networking site. There are actually expectations to participate on a platform. And they go, oh, really? So if someone breaks those terms of service agreements, there actually can be repercussions. And that's very empowering, and it helps to take some of the brittleness, the emotional brittleness out of the experience.
It's even better if the terms of service are simple and clear and accessible.
And not all caps, this small.
It's fascinating how small tweaks in the way a platform works can change the social environment. I recall, I'm not a gamer myself, but I recall hearing a few years ago about a gaming platform that was text-based. People communicated, and voice was added to the services so that people playing games could communicate with each other by voice. And immediately the sort of predatory behaviors dropped right away, because the people couldn't successfully imitate a young teen or something like that because of the addition of voice. And that's really neat to be aware of, the fact that tweaks like that can change the atmosphere and make it safer.
Well, so, here's where I sort of struggle, because on one hand, you want to see some businesses doing more, and not everybody is, and so you obviously want some sort of a push, whether it's government or noise or consumers, somebody, pushing some of these things to work better, because they still are so difficult and hard for the average user. But at the same time, I take a look at, and again, I hate to pick on Facebook because I love them, but I remember when the news feed was rolled out, and do you all remember the outcry? If you remember, in the early days, you went to your page when you got on a social network, whether it was MySpace or Facebook, and then if you wanted, you'd go visit Jim's page and see what he did today and check out him or look up somebody in your class who looked interesting. And then they rolled out this news feed where you started getting not your homepage when you went to your homepage. You started going to this page that had all this stuff about everyone else. So-and-so just broke up with this one, that. And people, a million of them joined groups. It was terrible. You were stalking all your friends. Who wanted to stalk all their friends? And guess what? We all wanted to stalk all our friends. Growth went through the space, and it's kind of one of the more popular things. Everyone does it now, and Twitter does it, and Facebook. And they kind of were experimenting, and if you had asked users, if you had asked them, right, certainly if the government, if you had asked some regulators, people ought to opt into that. And I think if you had asked users, do you want everything you do, anytime you make a change to your page, would you like it to be blasted to every one of your friends? People might have said, no, that's kind of freaky. And it turned out that they decided it was right, and Zuckerberg thought it made sense, and they did it, and it kind of worked. And so how do we leave room for thinking through some of these new ways that we're going to be connecting? I never thought I would. Do any of you share location? I've gotten hooked recently on Foursquare, again, an application that you download and you share where you are, and other people can have left comments. And if you've checked in there the most times, you become the mayor of that location. Are you the mayor of the museum, Salona? And who would have? And I don't quite understand where that's going to go and what they're going to stumble on that turns out to be fun and interesting. And do we worry that if we apply government, regulation to some of those things, that we lose that flexibility for experimenting, even though it means there'll be some screw-ups, there'll be beacons, and there'll be, other pushbacks and disasters when, no, people hated it, and hey, there's even legal liability. How do we do that balance? Jim, you're going to say it's the market and it'll work out?
Well, the news feed illustrates in microcosm, perhaps, that people's privacy expectations do change. Their privacy interests do change when they recognize benefits. I think today, if the news feed were taken out of Facebook, people would scream bloody murder louder than they did about when it was put on. It's sort of central to Facebook, getting the news feed. It does illustrate that it's a learning process. And if you locked in certain practices at any given time in this giant learning process of online applications, you'd lose a lot. We just don't know what it is, and there's no advocate for future business models, future opportunities for consumers. And so it's a good idea to resist regulation. But we'll continue to learn, and the society will continue to change in terms of what it wants.
Well, Nat, you talked about David Vladek's comments, and obviously something a lot of the folks in the room are following generally, is the FTC sort of re-examination of, is it just about harm and deception, or is it about dignity and self-respect? And does that fit into this online reputation thing as well? I mean, do we need the law? Do we need, or I know you don't want to say do we need the law, but is part of this process of figuring out what the new potential privacy framework should be? Does worrying about someone's dignity mean worrying about how to make sure they've got control over not being not just not hired, but not being embarrassed or not feeling out of control of that information? Does that fit into dignity?
I'm not sure where I haven't seen any proposals or any reviews of dignity as part of our review of sort of the privacy framework. I think what's really important for us is that we stay connected to what's going on out there in the world, what the practices are that people are engaged in, the consumer's experience, what they know and how they feel about that is part of it. You talk about sort of concern about regulation related to Facebook's newsfeed, but I don't think that was something where there was a proposed rule or a big lobbying push to say that there should be a rule or a law that should not be passed about